Hey, what's up guys, it's TechZoomer talking to you here. And I want to compare in today's video the iPhone 14 Pro Max against the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Should you upgrade from the iPhone 14 Pro Max to the 15 Pro Max? What was my experience with the iPhone 14 Pro Max like? And is my experience with the iPhone 15 Pro Max better? So, if you are excited, drop a like down below, subscribe to the channel, roll the intro. The iPhone 14 Pro Max came out in 2022, and it was a great phone. I loved it. I bought it when it first came out, then I returned it. I kept my iPhone 13 Pro Max until about February of 2023, and then I switched to the iPhone 14 Pro Max. Not because I wanted to, but because of my family deals. They ended up having an iPhone 14 Pro Max almost for free, and so I ended up upgrading. But again, I did not want it. But I upgraded and I had having it for about 7 months. I used that phone for 7 months and I loved it. It was the iPhone 14 Pro Max, an amazing phone. In my opinion, one of the best iPhones ever in terms of upgrades. But then September came out and Apple released the iPhone 15 Pro Max. The iPhone 15 Pro Max is also an incredible iPhone, and I think it's a sleeper upgrade. This is one of the biggest upgrades year over year that Apple has ever done. Trust me, like this is probably on the top 5 of those upgrades. Because the iPhone 15 Pro Max, although it looks really similar to the iPhone 14 Pro Max, it's a huge jump in several categories. So yes, let's discuss them all. To start, I want to talk about design. The iPhone 14 Pro Max features the squared off design with the very sharp edges, while the iPhone 15 Pro Max features the same squared off design but with rounded off edges. These two phones feel different in the hand. The iPhone 14 Pro Max is made of stainless steel, while the iPhone 15 Pro Max is made of titanium. These two phones feel very different because of the weight, size, and materials chosen by Apple. Yes, the iPhone 14 Pro Max is made of stainless steel. It has the squared off edges and the sharp edges, and again, is much heavier, and the weight distribution is much different. While the iPhone 15 Pro Max is much lighter. This is made of titanium and a blend between titanium and aluminum, and the edges are rounded off. So at the end of the day, the differences between these two designs are pretty simple. The iPhone 14 Pro Max is heavier and less easy to hold because it's sharper. So like after a few hours, you will feel the weight of this phone in your hand. And of course, because it's sharper, it will cut into your hand more. While the iPhone 15 Pro Max has a rounded off design, the weight distribution is better. The addition of aluminum to this frame made it much more lighter, and the weight distribution is better. If you hold these two phones on your hand right now, you will notice the difference between this phone and this phone. This one is much lighter and much easier to hold. Like, it's really hard to explain. You need to go to the store, hold the iPhone 15 Pro Max in your hand, and another iPhone with the 13, the 14, whatever, on your other hand. And it will feel the weight difference. You will feel the way they feel on your hand. The 14 Pro Max feels very heavy, feels bulky, feels sharp when you hold it, but also feels extremely premium, while the iPhone 15 Pro Max gives you a different feeling. The rounded off edges, the better weight distribution make this iPhone feel like an aluminum iPhone. But it isn't, because the touch that you get, the feeling that you had by holding up titanium, it's totally different. So it's a totally new experience to have a titanium iPhone when compared to the stainless steel iPhone. But this isn't to say that the stainless steel iPhone is a bad iPhone. It isn't. A stainless steel iPhone feels extremely premium, gives you that heft in the hand that most people like, and again, is very beautiful. Again, it's extremely beautiful. This iPhone feels like jewelry, while the iPhone 15 Pro Max feels like a very practical design. Really good to hold on your hand, but not as premium or has rich feeling. But again, they are two very different feelings. But if you are a practical one, if you decide by factors, by weight, by real just facts, I do believe that the iPhone 15 Pro Max is a better design than the iPhone 14 Pro Max. It's not an iteration, but it's also not innovation. It's just different. You gotta decide which one do you prefer. At the end of the day, I do believe that the iPhone 15 Pro Max is better than the iPhone 14 Pro Max, and it's actually a big difference. It's not better or worse, it's just different. You just had to hold on your hand and decide if it's better for you or worse for you. Another thing that is also different on these two phone designs is the stainless steel sides are glossy and the titanium sides are matte. So yeah, the glass back, on their both phones they are matte. But on the sides, the iPhone 14 Pro Max is glossy and so picks a ton of fingerprints, while the titanium iPhone is not as glossy, is, I would say, matte, but it depends on the color that you choose. On the iPhone 15 Pro Max titanium, the natural titanium color that I have, it doesn't pick any fingerprints. But if you go for a black titanium or, I don't know, a blue titanium, maybe, just maybe you'll get fingerprints. I'm not sure, I never hold that phone, but reports online and reviews are saying and talk about that. So keep that in mind. These are glossy. If you are really like oily hands, then you will get tons of fingerprints. And if you have really oily hands on the iPhone 15 Pro Max, then you won't notice that much because this is titanium, it's matte, it has this brushed look to it. It's really good. In my opinion, I really prefer titanium to stainless steel. Another thing that is also a good addition to the iPhone 15 Pro Max over the iPhone 14 Pro Max is the action button. The action button is super useful. I love it. I've been using it very much. On my iPhone 15 Pro Max, I have it for the camera, but you can have it for wherever you want to. That's the beauty of the action button. The 14 Pro Max features the old mute switch button. This button was useful when it was out, but I think it lacked some type of customization, some type of choice by the user. And Apple did it. They added the action button. Firstly introduced on the Apple Watch Ultra, this action button is super useful. You can map a shortcut to this action button and do whatever you want to. Like, you can create whatever shortcut you want and this will obey. Go to the shortcut app and have fun. Search online, find the best shortcuts available and create, customize. This is beautiful, incredible. Action button is so cool for the iPhone. There's so many people doing very incredible things. For me, I'm super basic. I'm just using it for the camera. You can just click it, open up the camera already whenever you want to, like clicking it, opens up the camera, takes the photo, and it's a shutter button, whatever you want to do. You can turn on your flashlight. You just go to settings, action button, and change the setting. While, again, the 14 Pro Max has the old mute switch that can just put your phone on silent mode or without. The iPhone 15 Pro Max can also do that with the action button that will give you different feeling haptics to tell you that if it's on silent mode or not. The displays on these two phones are really close. The iPhone 14 Pro Max has the same display as the iPhone 15 Pro Max. The only difference is the bezel size. The 15 Pro Max has a little bit smaller bezels than the iPhone 14 Pro Max. But in terms of screen details and screen specs, they are the same display. They still have the same dynamic island, they still have the same 2000 nits peak brightness, the same always on display, the same ProMotion display. So the display difference here will probably be the thing that you will notice the least. The only difference is the bezel size. Again, the 15 Pro Max has noticeably smaller bezels, but when compared to the 14 Pro Max, it's really close. And here you can notice that this upgrade is not that big, because again, the 15 Pro Max is just 1 year newer than the iPhone 14 Pro Max, and so Apple cannot innovate everywhere. Again, the displays on these two phones are really close, like 98% the same. The only difference, again, the bezel size. If you don't really care about that, why would you upgrade? As for battery life, these two phones have very similar batteries and, again, very similar battery performance. The 14 Pro Max could last me 1 day and a half, while the 15 Pro Max can last me 1 day and a half. Maybe I've noticed a little bit of a difference after iOS 17.0.3 came out and I talked about my latest review, the 2-week review on the iPhone 15 Pro Max, that the battery life has been improved and now I've got some better days. But again, the battery lives here are really similar. If you have an iPhone 14 Pro Max, the chances that you are below 95% of battery health are actually low. You could be 90% around now, the worst case scenario. And so you still have a really good battery health. You can just switch out the battery if you want. And the battery performance between these two phones will be very similar. So if you don't really care about the cameras and you just like your display, your battery, the upgrade here is not significant. One thing that is significant though is the new port. I do believe you should not buy the iPhone 14 Pro Max just because of these right now. The iPhone 14 Pro Max features the Lightning port, while the 15 Pro Max features USB-C. And this is a pretty big deal. The USB-C iPhone is probably one of the biggest upgrades coming to the iPhone ever. USB-C is perfect. I can use USB-C for so many cases that now I cannot live without it. I can take my SSD, 1 terabyte from Samsung and edit all my videos on my iPhone just using USB-C. This is USB-C 3.2, while the Lightning port is USB-C 2.0. So the transferring speeds between these two ports are really different. This one is 10 gigabits per second. This one is 400 megabits per second. Much slower. And you are transferring footage, trust me, it will be really different. You can transfer log footage, 4K ProRes footage from here in like 5 minutes, like 40 minutes of it. While the iPhone 14 Pro Max would take like 45 to an hour. It was really, really ridiculous. While the 15 Pro Max solves that issue, the transfer speeds are much, much better on the iPhone 15 Pro Max. But that's not it. The iPhone 15 Pro Max can charge your devices, your accessories, using its USB-C port, while the Lightning iPhone can't. So you can charge your Apple Watch, you can charge your AirPods, you can charge other people's iPhones, and you can charge other people's Android phones, while the iPhone 15 Pro Max cannot do that. The charging port here is just for charging or transferring footage from the iPhone to the computer. Nothing more. So I do believe with all the advantages that I've listed before, the iPhone 15 Pro Max is a way better performer on this point, because I do believe that USB-C is the future, and having USB-C on the iPhone 15 Pro Max, in my opinion, is the biggest deal on the difference between these two phones. Not the cameras, not the display, not the build quality, not the titanium, no. It's USB-C. And I wouldn't buy currently in 2023 the iPhone 14 Pro Max, because I do believe that Lightning port is truly outdated. Do not buy any Lightning iPhone, wait or save money, and preferably buy the iPhone 15 or 15 Plus. Because I don't think the 14 Pro Max, for the price point, although it's an amazing phone, it's better than the 15 or 15 Plus because of that Lightning port. USB-C is that big. Trust me, Apple should have added this a long time ago. And USB-C is perfect on the iPhone. The 15 Pro Max especially makes it a huge difference. But again, if you're an average consumer, maybe, just maybe, you don't actually use or actually enjoy these perks. But I think in about 2-3 years, you will. So, future-proof your iPhone, get the iPhone 15s, not the 14s. Obviously, this is an advice if you are looking to buy a new iPhone. If you currently have the iPhone 14, do not feel pressured to upgrade to the 15 just because of USB-C. No, wait a bit, 3-4 years, and then buy the USB-C iPhone next year. Just because you bought the 14 Pro Max last year and you have a Lightning port does not mean that you need to upgrade already just because of USB-C. It doesn't. But trust me, the upgrade is real, and I think if you upgrade, even if you decide to, you will feel very happy with that. These two phones feature very, very similar performances. This one features the A16, the same chip present on the iPhone 15 and 15 Plus, while this iPhone features the A17 Pro. Maybe the biggest difference here is the actual capabilities of the iPhone 15 Pro Max GPU, not the CPU. The CPU is about 15% to 20% faster, which is, I don't know, marginal gains for iOS. And on a day-to-day basis, you won't notice the difference between these two phones when using your iPhone. But the biggest difference will come when you want to play games on your iPhone, because the 15 Pro Max will support AAA games like Assassin's Creed Mirage and Resident Evil 4, while the 14 Pro Max won't. That's because of the A17 Pro chip. This chip here is a huge jump, not just in architecture because it's a 3nm chip, or in efficiency because it should be more efficient, but in GPU power especially. The A17 Pro chip, the same family as the M3 chip coming to the Mac soon, will be known for its GPU performance, and the iPhone is no different. So if you want to play games, this iPhone is more efficient and will save more battery, won't have any issues of overheating and the screen dimming, and of course, it will have support for AAA games. As for me, I'm not a big of an iPhone gamer, so I cannot actually enjoy the difference between these two phones, but if you are, trust me, with USB-C and the A17 Pro chip, in a few months, whenever they decide to release more AAA games for the iPhone 15 Pro Max, you will see why this, in my opinion, will start to kill some consoles. So, yeah, just give it some time. Let's now talk about the most important part of this comparison, the cameras. Because most people, they upgrade their phones based on the cameras. The iPhone 14 Pro Max features a triple camera system, while the iPhone 15 Pro Max features a triple camera system. Wait, the same? Well, let's keep going. The iPhone 14 Pro Max features a 48 megapixel main sensor. The iPhone 15 Pro Max features a 48 megapixel main sensor. The iPhone 14 Pro Max features a 12 megapixel ultra-wide sensor. The iPhone 15 Pro Max features a 12 megapixel ultra-wide sensor. The iPhone 14 Pro Max features a 12 megapixel telephoto camera. The iPhone 15 Pro Max features a 12 megapixel telephoto camera. So, what's the difference? Well, it's actually a pretty big one. The iPhone 14 Pro Max features first a 3x telephoto camera, while the iPhone 15 Pro Max features a 5x telephoto camera. So this is a 120mm equivalent, this is a 77mm equivalent. And in my use cases, for the last year that I used the iPhone 14 Pro Max, and for the last 2 weeks that I've used the 15 Pro Max, I found that the 5x 120mm telephoto camera is more useful and can take better looking and much more pleasing portrait shots. So here's some examples that show you that I think that the 77mm is not as good as the 120. And of course, this is not just my personal choice. I think that 120mm focal length is more suited up for the portrait photography and for that telephoto actual jump that you want to get. The 3x is really close to the 2x that you already have for the optical cropping on the sensor that the 15 Pro Max also has and the 40 Pro Max also has. So I do believe that the 5x is more useful as a telephoto camera than the 3x. But the differences do not stop here. The HDR on the main camera is much better on the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Also, Apple put a different coating on the lens to see if they could solve the issue of those flares that you could get on your video or your photos. I don't think it has been completely turned off and killed that issue, but I think it has been reduced by about 50%. Here's some examples on a video that I took at night with very bright lights, and you can see that the iPhone 15 Pro Max performs much better than the iPhone 14 Pro Max. So yeah, maybe the issue was not completely solved, but it was reduced by about 60 to 70%. And that's a win in my book. Again, HDR situations, in my opinion, it's better on the iPhone 15 Pro Max than it is on the iPhone 14 Pro Max. The photos here are a 24 megapixel shot. The normal photos, while here, they are a 12 megapixel shot. On both phones, you can take advantage of the 48 megapixel RAW mode, while, again, this is a very niche scenario. I do believe it's a really good advantage between these two phones. They both can take amazing 40 megapixel shots that can get really close to mirrorless cameras. So if you have both of these phones, and that's the biggest main factor for you, both of these phones can take amazing 48 megapixel shots. While the normal photos coming from the 15 Pro Max are 24 megapixels. So they will retain more resolution, and in my opinion, they will look sharper and much closer to a mirrorless camera. So if you do really value resolution in your photos, the 15 Pro Max has double the resolution as the 14 Pro Max on normal shooting mode. If you decide to always use RAW, then there's no difference. Optimization on these two cameras also got much better. The main sensor now can recognize different scenarios better and use the lenses much more accordingly. The only thing that I would say is still not upgraded from the 14 Pro Max to the 15 Pro Max is the distance of focusing of the main camera. Currently is really far away, and it will miss focus if you get the products really close to the camera or the subject really close to the camera. It will turn on the macro photography that is also available on both of these phones and use the ultra wide lens. In that case, the quality will really go down, and I don't think it looks great. But again, let me know in the comments below what you think. One thing that actually evolves year over year in a really rapid pace is night mode. And the differences here on night mode video and night mode photography are huge. You can see here portrait modes, night photography, night video. The differences between these two are huge. This one can take better night photos, better night videos, better night portraits than the 14 Pro Max. It's an overall big jump between these two phones. And it's actually very weird to say that because these two phones are just 1 year apart and the jump is very significant. One thing that is also really cool, and I've talked about portrait modes before, is the automatic portrait mode. Now, without tapping anything, without doing anything, the iPhone will recognize the subject, if it is a human or an animal, and it will retain the portrait information needed to create a portrait photo. Those photos that you really like to see, but you need to swipe up on older iPhones to take. Now, on the 15 Pro Max, it will take it automatically. So on photos, on post, you want to add it up, that effect, you can do it. And you can switch focus between one subject to another. So I do believe this is a big advantage on the iPhone 15 Pro Max. I don't know if that was possible to add from the iPhone 14 lineup, but one thing that I know, if this is a software lock feature, it's a pretty cool one. So yeah, that was the camera differences. I thought that the camera upgrade was big, but I think that in terms of features is a very feature-rich upgrade. But if you really dive deep on the photos, they will look very similar. One thing that has also changed is the video. The video is much upgraded on the iPhone 15 Pro Max. You can now record 4K 60 ProRes to an external SSD, all because of that USB-C port, and now you can record log footage. So if you are a filmmaker, a videographer, then this is a very big upgrade. And I think it justifies the upgrade from the 14 Pro Max to the 15 Pro Max itself. So if you are a YouTuber that records all of your videos with your iPhone, this is a major upgrade. Upgrade your phone just because of this. Trust me, it will feel like a huge jump. It will remove all of that weird sharpening that the iPhone or other phones add to the footage. It will remove all of that processing to the footage. It will make it really natural and really close to a mirrorless camera. Also, a big bonus is that you will be able to match the colors with other mirrorless cameras because of the log format. It's really, really useful. Final Cut Pro will detect it automatically and turn it up into a Rec 709 format. So log footage is a big thing on the iPhone 15 Pro Max over the 14 Pro Max. The iPhone 14 Pro Max started at $1099 with 128 gigabytes of base storage, while the iPhone 15 Pro Max starts at $1199 with 256 gigabytes of base storage. So it starts with a more expensive price tag, but it also gives you more in terms of storage. So at the end of the day, Apple did not increase prices. They just removed the base storage model. But let me know in the comments down below. Do you think it's a pretty big upgrade between these two phones? Do you think that it's justifiable to upgrade? In my opinion, I still don't think so. I think that for most people, 95% of people, is not worth to upgrade because, again, these are really close phones in terms of launch dates, and the differences are only on the camera side and on the USB-C. But if you do really value those Pro features, then, in my opinion, this is the realest and the best Pro phone ever. This is also a Pro phone, but the Pro features here are really much improved. Again, that really depends. If you value these Pro features, it's a big upgrade. If you don't, then the battery life is pretty much the same, the displays are pretty much the same. The design, although stainless steel, this is titanium, this has curved edges, this has sharp edges, it will end up feeling the same after a while. And so, I don't think it's worth the upgrade if you don't really care about the Pro features. But let me know in the comments down below what you think. And also, while you're there, follow my social networks, Twitter, Instagram. Don't forget to drop a like down below, subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys for watching. Bye-bye.